Thank you all for being here today. We're excited for another great training here at Coldwell Banker Dynasty. As your broker, I just really want to thank you for being here live in attendance. We're really trying to re-engage with our speakers and our affiliates who provide so much value for ourselves and our clients. So thank you for attending and being here. And I really want to thank Richard Riegal. Many of you have not met him yet, but he was so gracious to introduce himself to you guys while we're waiting, getting set up. So Richard has it and runs his own property management firm here in locally South Pasadena, and been doing this for quite some time. I'll allow him to share a little bit about his background and details, but these are the things I want you to think about during the course of your relationships with your clients, and you help them purchase properties. Many of them outgrow it and they want to lease it out to and rent it out to others, which is absolutely smart and very great to be an investor and renting it out and really just picking up more and more passive income. That's a great thing. The not so great thing is California laws regarding tenant protections. And we in the real estate industry need to be strong, knowledgeable experts in which localities and municipalities have rent ordinances, rent control. What are the duties of a landlord? What are the things that to decipher between a eviction, at fault eviction, or a no fault eviction? Do they get any recourse or benefits if you ask them to vacate the property? It's 30 days, 60 days notices. What happens when a tenant stops paying rent? These are all questions that our clients and us are dealing with. And it's a great opportunity for you to ask these direct questions to someone who's in the know, dealing with this on a day-to-day basis. And obviously it's not something that is always fun to do, dealing with people who either are not paying or not cooperating with our sale. And these are issues that we're really having more and more to learn how to be adaptable, I guess. And ultimately, to my best advice to you, because I have listing right now which has tenant occupied and it's difficult to coordinate showings. How are we going to strategize? How are we going to get this accomplished? How do we build that relationship with the tenant to get us to open up these doors? It's not easy. So without further ado, Richard, we have the floor. Thank you. I have this the Zoom is over here and you can speak to the audience. It's just going to be
you want me to
here.
stand about here?
Yeah, anywhere you want. You can move around and just
Oh, if I can move around, I'm gonna move around.
just go ahead and move and adjust to the audience, but it's okay.
Can I ask you to pass these out? Or
Absolutely,
just-
I'll help you pass them on.
Thank you. One. Okay. So a little background about myself. Property management. I started real estate in 1986. I worked for a major firm and did investment sales. I, in 1988, had an opportunity to open my own property management company. The short story is I had an owner who said, okay, he purchased a building, 5 units in Montrose, and we turned it over to a property management company I was affiliated with. And sometimes property management doesn't go the way you think it's going to go. So I was sitting down with them in the first month and I said, how's it going? And he goes, well, 40% of the rents weren't collected. The loan got paid late, so we had a payment fee, and the utilities didn't get turned on. And I said, well, I could do that good. And he said, well, when can you start? And I quickly gathered myself, ran to my spouse and partner in life and said, if you keep the books, I'll go out and do all the work outside. And she said, yes. So that formed Riegal Property Management in 1988. And 1988 was different laws, different time period that allowed you to do many more things than it does today. However, if you get an opportunity, somebody asks you about property management, please share and do whatever you think is right for the property. There are pros and cons, and I'd want you to weigh them, what fits best for the situation. So 1988, we formed the property management company, and it's now 1923, 35 years later. So we have 60 single family homes that we manage. I have another 80 apartment buildings we manage, and we have 10 retail sites we manage. So that's 150 properties, 900 tenants. The finances, you get about $50, $60 per unit, all collectively together. So now $50 or $60 per unit, 900 units, you think $50,000. Okay, I have a staff of 8 people. And then I have all my overhead and expenses. So it really tightens up everything. So there's, bottom line, not a lot of money in property management. You're working on a 5% of gross rents income. So I wouldn't do it for the money, but if you have a love for it and you enjoy it, I love it, I enjoy it, I like to see properties do well. So 3 success stories. First, single family home. Bought in 1992, it's 21 years later, was bought for $350,000, now worth $2 million. So that means you went from 350 to double that, 700,000, double that to 1.4 million. It's still worth another 600,000, $2 million. So the good news is somebody wants to hold on to a single family home, appreciates 8, 9, 10% value. South Pasadena property. Another success story, apartment buildings, a big one. Okay, 2003, bought $10 million, 50 unit property. It's now worth $25 million. So 20 years later, it went from 10 to 20, doubled, and then another 5. Apartment buildings can be very good because it also puts off cash flow, about $200,000 a year in cash flow. So that's why you do apartment buildings. The success story of that is the first 5 years, the owner got nothing. Zero, nada. All the money was put back into the building. So it created a success story that way. And then we have a manufacturing retail site. This was done 30 years ago, purchased for 1 million, now worth 3 million. So it doubled one time and then another $1 million on top of that. It's putting off about $150,000 a year in income. Okay, it is what is in the industry called a triple net tenant. That's a funny term. What's that really mean? So that means the tenant pays for the property taxes. Tenant pays for insurance. Tenant pays for all utilities. The owner essentially gets all income and doesn't pay any expenses. So it's triple net tenants can be very attractive. So 3 success stories to let you know of. What Riegal Property Management does is, I have an old-fashioned statement that says I manage property like it's my own. I actually treat other people's properties better than my own, but that's part of being serviced and driven that way. So what we do all day is manage property. What I do not do, and I have great admiration for you, is I do not sell. A full broker's license, do not sell. Why? You guys have so much work, so many forms and things and laws to keep up with. It drives me nuts. But I am appreciative you can do that. It takes a whole lot of time, effort, energy to do that. Had a friend who just recently sold a house. He had the notary come to his, mobile notary come to him. He had to sign 30 forms. He had to go through 100 pages. That's scary. And so, make you aware, you have a whole lot of information and education you got to keep right at your fingertips. So what Riegal Property Management does is, if an agent brings me a property, I manage it, I try and take care of it. When the owner goes to sell, I refer right back to that agent. I don't want the sales, lots of things to do. So you would get that property back, you'd be the first contact. And so therefore, there's no competition between Riegal Property Management, the way we do business, and you. So what we do is we collect rent, we screen tenants, we pay all the bills that the owner wants to pay for us. We give the money to the owner every month. We personalize, we want to get to know the owner, and we want to get to know the tenant. The reason we want to get to know the tenant is we have a communication gap And so if we can keep talking to them, especially on the telephone or in person, we bridge that communication gap a whole lot more. We have plenty of plumbers, electricians. We have nobody on staff, and that is by design. So if an owner doesn't like our plumber, our roofer, we have no conflict. We say, let's go on to the next person. If we have a single family home, the other thing we do is we will go inside once a year and take pictures inside and outside. So for any owner who is out of state, we solve that problem of, do I have to fly back in to see the inside of my house? Because we'll send them pictures. And that's good, because they will recognize, hey, that's the inside of my house. Oh, that's out of place. Did you check this? And that's good for us to hear. It's also good and reassuring they do things. So, we have a new assembly bill that's coming into play for next year. So make you aware. Assembly Bill 12 talks about security deposits. It was signed off by the governor and will start July of 2024. And what it says is that all security deposits have to equal the amount of rent. So therefore, when Regal Property Management would be 500 or maybe double the amount of rent in security deposits, we can't do that anymore. So this,
You're saying that's a maximum.
that's the maximum.
Then it 1 month.
1 month's rent
No.
equals 1 month security deposit. Whether the person has terrible credit or good credit. So laws are getting more restrictive. I wanted to make you aware of that law.
You can't collect last month's rent either, right?
You can collect last month's rent. So let me answer that question. Regal Property Management does not collect last month's rent because last month's rent, if you increase the rent, is the same as it is this year. So if I have a tenant that lasts 10 years, they get this year's rent for last month's rent credit, not what it should be in 10 years. And I always ask the question to an applicant. I have many applicants come in and say, oh, I'll pay you 1 full year's worth of rent. Sounds really good. I ask, why can't I depend on you every month to send me a check? Because what's going to happen after the first year? So if you ask questions and think things through, sometimes I'd rather have steady, consistent people than somebody who's going to go sky high, and then I'm worried about the downfall. So
The Assembly Bill 12 retroactive? No, right? It's only
No.
for any new leases.
going forward. So you're going to see a picture of an inside unit. This was, owner came to us this year and said, Regal Property Management, can you manage this building in Arcadia? We said, sure. There's 20 plus units in this building. And I knew the owner, it was a good owner. And so we decided to take it on. And this first picture shows a plumber in the kitchen. They called me at 8 o'clock at night. One of those friendly calls that says, look, we have a plumbing emergency. And yes, we had plumbing emergency. The pipe in the kitchen had broken and the water was going to go on the kitchen floor and into the living room. And then we could have a mold problem. And we could have a water problem. And we could have all kinds of things. So the plumber fortunately got out there and we started on it that night and capped it off. The next day I went in to see the unit. So lo and behold, let us have you look at the living room when you walk in the front door and what you will see. Oh, I'll hold this up for the camera. So when you go through the unit, we see a hoarding situation.
Oh, yes, we do.
So this was an employee of that big famous firm that starts with a J and may go on with two other letters, does all the engineering and sends things to NASA. Oh, that's it, JPL. And this is how the tenant lived. So, lo and behold, we look at all the ordinances in the county. Does the county have any ordinance on hoarding inside the unit? No. They have an ordinance outside the building, but not inside. Okay, so now then you have your lease agreement. You've seen your wonderful CAR lease agreement. It says you will keep your property clean and habitable. Okay, so we could cite some clean and habitability, but it's not a law. There is no law. There's no city. Went to the city and said, city, do you have any ordinance against inside the unit? No. So the good news is we were able to serve a 3-day notice to perform covenants or quit. And we cited the hoarding, we cited cleanliness, we cited mold, we cited trash. Because there was a clause in there that says any trash has to be bagged up and taken to the trash can. By exerting pressure, and then we followed up a couple days later and a couple days later, we came to an agreement where the tenant moved out within 45 days, did pay the rent, and we then were left with the unit to clean up, which we were happy with. So, make you aware, there are some success stories you can have. You just have to stay on top of it. Be diligent about it. Okay.
You got the tenant out or?
Yes, 45 days later.
45 days.
45 days, it took us to,
The rent is paid,
the rent was paid. So we clicked all the rent. Then we just had to deal with the inside of the unit, which they left us some souvenirs, which we cleaned out. We had unit that was not good. And so we're cleaning it up and retrofitting that unit. So it ends with a good story. It's a pain to go through.
You have to go through eviction?
We did not go through eviction.
This is a voluntary.
We got voluntary move out.
why they didn't pay? What's the reason they didn't pay the rent?
No, they did pay the rent. They just created this horrendous mess inside. That's how they lived. You could say they're messy, but you don't want to, you want to be very careful taking a hoarding case to court. Attorneys do not, my attorney advised me, you don't want to really take this to court, but if you can exert pressure on them, because you got to get a judge to rule against somebody who's, you're throwing them out of their own home.
They'll claim it's a medical condition.
Yes.
That's what it is.
So the other thing is if you have somebody who lives out of the state or out of the country. And so this morning I had an out of the state owner from Colorado says, can I manage his property? I said, I can manage your property, yes. However, if you collect rent for an out of state owner or out of country owner, you have an obligation to the state of California Franchise Tax Board to pay 7% of every dime you collect in rent on a quarterly basis to the Franchise Tax Board. So, example, if it was $4,000 month's rent on a house, over 3 months, that's $12,000. That means you have to hold back $980 and pay that quarterly to the Franchise Tax Board on their behalf. If you do not, you are fined $500 each year for the incident, and you are obligated to pay their $980 every quarter for 4 quarters, which almost equals $4,000 out of your own pocket. And the Franchise Tax Board does not like non-payment of items. So you're fighting a big conglomerate. So I make you aware, any out-of-state owner, out-of-country owners, be very careful with the Franchise Tax Board of State of California wants their money. And you face this all the time with your sales. That's why they have you do the FERPTA. And so it's another reason. Now, California is not the only state. I hear in Utah and in other states, they are enforcing this rule because they want their money in taxation purposes. So. That out, and then we'll do this one. So I have 4 questions that I think every owner wants to know. Now, I think this can apply to sales. So if you want to use this for your own personal use, please do. Page 1 says, I did it right. What does Regal Property Management do? Or you can turn around and say, what do you do? What do you do for the owner? And then the second question is, how do you do it? And I think you realtors do a lot of things. So if you think and then have a sheet of paper or put it on, then you can foresee, you can already give information to the seller. These are all the things I'm going to do for you. This is how I do it. Then we have the other 2 pages. That we're passing out. So the third question is, how can you make their life easier? If you take a listing, what are you going to do for them? How are you going to make their life easier? Because you're going to show it. You're going to take all the telephone calls. You're going to take all the terrible calls. You're going to block them from all the people who you think need to be blocked from, who are not helping them. You are telling them all the information that is pertinent to their sale and how many times it's being showed and how it goes. And then finally, define yourself. What is truly different about you? You are all unique, different individuals. And I met you and you have some fascinating stories. So please tell your fascinating story. Be proud of your story. So what is different about Regal Property Management? We're really a truly family-owned property management. I work with my daughter, my son, my son-in-law, my brother-in-law, and my spouse. I get to do property management every day. I enjoy seeing properties run well. You probably enjoy seeing a sale come together. There's great excitement when you can get people together. My contract's only for a short period. It's less than 1 year. And that is really on purpose, because if I don't get along with somebody in 6 or 9 months, let's not do business. I'm not going to argue over it. I'm going to say, let's move on. Not everybody is for me. I do have 4 owners from 1988 that are still with us today. So I am a long-term property manager. I like long-term relationships. However, my contract is month to month on most people. So my philosophy is, if I work hard this month, I get to work for them next month. If I don't, I could be out of business. And hopefully that spurs me to stay in business. So that, in a nutshell, is what I wanted to get across, speak on. Questions or comments? Yes.
Do you handle your own evictions?
I handle them up. I serve the 3-day notice. I try and settle with tenant, because nobody wins in court. Everybody's going to lose something. If we can get settlement, we come to a settlement agreement. It's documented and done. If in the few cases they're just going to be adamant they want their way, then we hire eviction attorney. And I actually have 3 different attorneys. Why do you have 3 different attorneys? One is very by the book. He's very on top of everything, gets everything done really great. The other one argues extremely well in court. So if I want a presenter who's going to defend us in court vigorously, I handle that one. I have another one. he handles pretty well Los Angeles. Los Angeles is a whole different cadre of things. So he handles our LA. So we've been in business long enough to say there are differences and let's apply that difference to the situation. That's it. You're welcome. Yes.
If the tenants didn't pay the rent, what's your action?
If the tenant didn't pay the rent, what is the action? First, we're trying to talk to the tenant. Why haven't you paid rent? What is going on? Is there a family emergency? Is there something you lost out on? Usually people are pretty consistent. So we know if they haven't paid rent before, then it's just a problem tenant we have to rein in, try and enforce. So if communication doesn't work, then I serve a 3-day notice. That gives motivation for them to talk. And let's get a dialogue going. Because I have a few days, 3 days, it has to be business days, can't end on a holiday. So you have to give them that, can't count weekends, follow all that script. Then after that, I turn it over to the attorney. And the tenant will then usually call me and I say, no, everything has to go to the attorney. And so the attorney will then back channel and talk to us and we'll work on direction on how we go. If we can reach a settlement and they're willing to pay the attorney's fees and pay up back rent, fine, we will reach that agreement. If not, we leave the threat of court open, but there are 10 different pathways an eviction can go. And it could last up to 9 months. And you could still go through bankruptcy, even though bankruptcy can be dismissed upon you. So you can go 9 months without rent. Yes, sir.
On the eviction case, do you represent the landlord at the court, and if you do you charge extra on it?
Yes and yes. So an eviction, do I represent the landlord? Yes, I go to court for the landlord. And yes, I do have a special fee for it. It's presently $500 for a court appearance for our company to go. It's an emotional time in court. So when you go to court, you will be usually you go outside the courtroom and see if you can reach a settlement. Now you're going back and forth. And these are not pleasant negotiations because you're being accused of terrible things, or the property is, or the owner is. So, but you have to put that part of your arsenal and you learn to deal with the emotional stuff that comes at you. You try and dismiss it and you go on to the facts of let's stay on the present course. If you know, one, that you have a real strong case, because there's no black and white case anymore, because a tenant can still elect to go to jury trial. If you're going to go to jury trial, that means the judge doesn't decide. You're postponed another 4 weeks, and the owner has out about $25,000 in legal fees to have a jury trial. Win or lose, $25,000, a lot of money. So that is an everyday thing that can occur in the courts. So you try and even get in court and get a settlement and get them out. Now you can be adamant. I can be adamant and say, I want them out for sure, but I have to be willing to give up weeks of free rent to get a sheriff lockout date.
Is, 2 questions.
Yes.
First, is it legal to offer cash for keys?
Is it legal to offer cash for keys? Yes, you can do a settlement. You have to check with the city. The city of Pasadena now has a ordinance that says you have to follow their prescriptive item.
Right. Second,
So, and yes, I do it with an attorney involved because some attorneys want a termination of lease and a settlement agreement. That's 2 separate agreements. Some try and combine it into one. So you have to make sure your owner is in agreement with who you use and how it's done. And it's 5 pages long and it has a whole lot of prescriptive things to it.
next question. You have a set fee for single families as versus, multi-units? Are they all one fee, 6%, 5%? What is your general fee? And on top of that, do you have levels of management? Such as, are you full management on everything, or do you have management where you collect rents, but the owner takes care of the repairs or whatever? And if not, do you have a money limit to where you say, if it's going to be more than $500, we contact the owner first? Or do you just, let's say the plumbing is $2,500, do you let the owner know before you do the plumbing, or do you just do the plumbing?
So excellent. I'm going to take them in reverse order and remind me of the order. The first one is, because there were 3 questions. First one, can Regal Property Management spend any amount of money? No owner is going to allow me to do that. So I put a cap on it. My cap is $1,200, which is about where I could replace a hot water heater. Because if I call an owner, you got to replace a hot water heater. I'm busy enough. I don't need that call. Above that, then I need to be able to call them and get their approval. You asked about set fees. So one, like in your office, you should have a minimum. So I shouldn't do anything and make less than $100, actually $200 in today's marketplace. So you want to be up there, and I include a percentage of it. So if it's a single family home, it's usually about $200 or 7% as general. I have 2 golden rules though, before I take on any property. I have to go past the property and I have to meet the owner. And what I am doing is qualifying that property and that owner, because I can't manage everything. And so I acknowledge that I can manage 90 some odd percent of just about anything.
But you don't want to slumlord.
I do not want somebody who's not going to pay money for repairs.
Right. It sounds.
Foreign customer, could I do it on Zoom? No. So I pretty well have my rule. You come meet me in person. I believe in personal relationships. My business is built out of that. So if I have a personal relationship with somebody, they treat me differently than a Zoom or a phone call. Hey, just take care of this. It doesn't work for me. And some of the big firms, some of the other firms, they'd be willing to do that. But I want to have that relationship. I want to be able to know my limits. I am trying to learn my owner as well as I can, so that way I can answer a whole lot of questions the tenant's going to have before I even have to call the owner. And if I have to call the owner, I have to have that relationship, because I have to deliver good news. Hey, we got rent, everything's running, everything's good. And bad news. Hey, there's tree roots in the sewer line. It's going to cost you $5,000. If you don't have a real good, if I don't have a real good relationship with that owner is going to, go what the heck and then leave me. And so I'd rather have that relationship. If you go and take a listing on a house and you have this inspection report that comes back terrible, and they got to spend $20,000 to fix things before you sell it, you want to tell the owner then and have that relationship. These are the things you're probably going to have to do. So I like that personal relationship. Yes.
One question for the repair. So usually the landlord will ask you, give the 2 or 3 quotations first, before you start to sell. Who is going to contract?
Yes.
Or they just depends on you. You just give 1 quotation, it's okay. The landlord.
So it depends. If it's a roof quote, I'll get 2 quotes. I probably won't get 3. The reason being, I found too many vendors who are just in it for the money. Many people promise you things, but they don't deliver on the side. And what's hard about property management is you have to be the enforcer. If there's a contract, you have to enforce it. So if I'm working with an honest person, I can enforce that contract and feel good for the owner. We're getting quality money for the quality work. If I go to other vendors and I haven't had their work performance before, many times they'll come in with a low bid and not perform to the standard that is good for what you're paying for. So again, having a relationship with the owner, I can manage the owner and say, no, in this instance, I'm going to give you, one bid, one estimate, one suggestion, and go with it. And so it also depends what level. If you're talking $50,000, obviously you want big bids. If you're talking for a repair of a unit, and turnover costs right now is from $5,000 to $25,000, but contractors are so busy, they cannot give you a bid on even a remodel at $20,000. But if you work with them all the time, you get a feel, and I can make suggestions to my owners. This is what we think you ought to do. Did that answer your question? You're welcome. Yes.
Here says the security deposit be 1 month rent only,
Yes.
not charge more than 1 month rent.
No more than 1 month, starting July of next year.
Right now, you charge.
No. Pardon?
You charge pet deposit.
Okay, that's an excellent question, and we have that in front of the attorney. Because there's a question that is not answered that we've read in the bill yet, is a pet deposit above the security deposit? Usually so, as interpreted by law.
Exactly.
However, how many pet deposits have we taken in the last 24 months? Maybe one. How many emotional support animals have I taken in the last 24 months? Yeah, probably about 100.
You mean you can't take a deposit on the support animal?
No, cannot. No deposit on emotional support animal. So and you cannot even contest the notice from the doctor on, is this really a support animal or not? So you have to accept what the tenant gives you on emotional support animal and just go with it. You can fill out a form for support animal, make them sign it, make sure they will take care of the pet and follow some basic rules. And you can name that pet, and that's only for that one pet is an emotional support animal. Cannot be added to or third one added.
How about insurance for pets, for even emotional pets?
Insurance
Yeah,
cannot
insurance.
require.
Not required.
Nope. You can on a pet, but you're not an emotion. Yes.
So getting back to the cell, when it turns around later on. Do you charge a referral? Should you make us pay your referral fee? of any
No.
kind? Is there an additional charge for management of it during that time? I mean, other than your standard charge?
Usually not. Except some owners take advantage of us property managers during a sale, saying, oh, I want you to do the termite repairs. I want you to do the walkthroughs. I want you to do all this. So I do have a clause that my property management fees can double if they're going to take advantage of me. But if it's standard, you guys are selling it, you handle everything, no fee for Regal Property Management. Volume discount, we're gonna have to talk you're gonna have to talk number of units, number of buildings, and so each one I'll take individually, but if you think 5 or 6%, I know there's some companies doing less, and I understand.
How many units would qualify for it? Maybe that's better. 10 and then 20.
You're gonna have to be up there about 50 or above.
But 5 to 7% is not still low. The rate.
It's tough to make a living on 5 to 7%.
But commercial,
Pardon?
commercial,
Commercial.
you will charge.
Sometimes it depends on the commercial. If it's individual retail, it's still got to be 5 to 7 because individual retail has a whole lot of problems to it, meaning you have a little business running 1,500 square feet to 2,000 square feet. They're trying to make a living. They need their rent at a certain basis. So if you do retail, you have to be really hands-on and concerned about that business, or they're going out of business on you and you have a vacancy that can last 2-3 years. So retail vacancies don't go overnight. Yes.
The other thing is, if you had a large apartment complex that you're managing, or you had a strip mall, do you do like a weekly, a bi-monthly drive through around the property to make sure that the exterior, like there's not all graffitied up, or do you do that?
So on large apartment buildings, 16 units and above, you have to have an on-site manager. So on-site managers had better be policing and walking our property.
So a strip mall?
So strip mall, no, I don't have a basis for it. However, what happens is, like in real estate, you have a big up and down. Meaning you go past a house and you're there all the time and you're listing it, you're taking photos, you're getting it repaired, you're spending inordinate amount of time all at one time. When we first take on a property, we spend inordinate amount of time at the very beginning, to get it up, to meet the tenants, to go through the units, to get to know it, to get it running, and there's always some things you don't catch, so you have to put a lot of effort into it. So then it diminishes for a while, which is good. And then you go back and you check on it about, I'm past property at least every 6 months outside to see it, but hopefully it's running well. And tenants call you on problems. So I hardly ever have a, situation. In my single family homes, we go into at least once a year to make sure they're being taken care of.
So the next part of it would be, what counties do you do management services in?
So I am located in South Pasadena. I need to be with any property within an hour.
One
Well,
hour.
that's not bad then.
So-
Riverside or Orange County?
I won't do Riverside. I could go up to Rancho Cucamonga. I can go to Van Nuys. I can go to Monterey Park. I can go La Crescenta, Orange. No, I got to be within an hour, even with some traffic. Or else if they call and they got water running out the front door, how do I get there? Am I,
When you take on a new client, do you charge an initial,
setup fee? No, no initial setup fee.
When you look for the tenants, for the client. So included, right? All of it.
Yes.
No
yes.
extra charge.
When we put in a new tenant, they have to sign 25 pages of documentation. They have to sign an inspection report. They have to provide guaranteed funds. They have to meet us in the property. So we want to make sure everybody goes through the property. And for that, and going all the way through all the time and effort of going through multiple applications, selecting it, doing the credit check, getting all the documentation on payment of their salaries, and contacting former property managers, then we collect 25% of the first month's rent. One-time fee.
Cheap.
Well, I thought so.
25%. Is that community?
First month's
That's
rent.
a commission. That's the all commission. All commission.
Your commission is 6% of what? It's a lot more.
No,
Oh,
it's
well, it
not.
can be.
So you put this thing on the MS or not? Or just putting on management website?
It depends. Small units, they usually can't list, you don't list them because there's enough people out following through the advertising world. If it's, my most expensive is $8,000, $8,500 right now for a house. So that one wonderful realtor used and got a tenant. Tenant's been in there 5 years.
Nice.
Brings in $8,500 a month rent to the owner. Yes.
On property management agreement, so with the client,
I do, yes.
can you bring out the topic or?
No, because I keep it proprietary. I don't want it to get too far out. But I'll meet with any tenant and I'll go through everything. I'll answer any question you have. But yeah, there's some fees that I just want to keep and I want to be able to explain. And I don't want everybody explaining what I've built for 35 years. So
So do you do what what the owner wants as far as month to month or 1 year lease? Does it matter to you the kind of tenant?
yes, tenants are very important to me.
No, I mean as far as.
So I put a time limit on it. So let me see if this answers your question.
Okay,
I put a 10-month lease together. If I can live with a person for 10 months, fine, we keep them. After 12 months, I cannot evict them unless I have just cause, as Kelvin said.
so you.
Just cause is pretty black and white. It can only be rent. It's hard to do other things. Otherwise, if within 10 months they've come in and said they were going to be the greatest tenant in the world, never cause a problem, and they call me every other week. And then they want it repaired. So after 10 months or 9 months, we terminate the lease. Because basically we want to do business with good people.
We should be doing, if you're gonna rent, you should be doing no longer than 10 months
Or doing it.
to try to not get involved in that,
12-month
yeah,
contract.
12-month thing.
Or doing it.
So basically,
Why don't you give
yeah,
me a minute?
like do 11 months, please.
Yeah, that's what I'm.
You could do 11 months. You have 1 month to, get it done.
I mean, one.
Once you get to a year, you can't give them a notice.
So after 10 months, don't give the notice, say, what's the notice? We no longer
Notice termination of lease.
termination.
See?
Yeah, I'd give it, you'll know in the first 6-7 months if a tenant is good or bad. So we're writing notices, 60 days ahead.
60 days.
Yeah.
Is the landlord
So you might
involved?
not get your rent, you might not get your next 2 months. Rent in 60 days.
You may. That's a risk. Nothing's guaranteed in life, right? So if you take it, hey, I may not be here tomorrow, but I probably will. So I'll take my chances on that. I'd rather get rid of a bad tenant and lose 2 months rent than have a bad tenant cost my owner 10 to 20% more each month to keep a bad tenant. They're going to keep driving costs up.
After 12 months, doesn't it turn into a month to month?
No, you cannot. Only just cause is how you can terminate. After 1 year,
Repeat that?
after 1 year, only just cause is the reason you can tell a tenant to leave.
Is that in LA County?
Doesn't it turn into a month to month?
No.
It turns to month to month technically, but you can't terminate.
You can't. But
State
they-
law.
But they can give you a 30-day notice to move.
They can give you a notice to move. Yes.
And we can't give them 30-day notice to.
No. AB 1482. California state law.
But that only applies to multifamily. We're talking, what we do with mostly single family.
Single family home, I would check the jurisdiction. Yes.
In a normal situation, not Pasadena, not in the city of LA, you have a single family here in Arcadia or Tucker City. They will be exempted
Yes.
from what you're talking about.
Yes, if they're under and 1482. Yes.
That's good. But you gotta be careful of where.
I'm sorry, you had a
Well,
question?
is the landlord involved when you do all this, tell the tenant to leave or terminate the lease?
Okay,
You
so
need the landlord's approval.
no, I do not need the landlord's approval. So, however, I started by meeting the owner in person. Right, my requirement. I've developed a relationship with them. So along the way, if Regal Property Management determines this is a bad tenant, we'll probably give a courtesy call to the owner, tell him, yes, we're going to take out this tenant due to X, Y, and Z. And I haven't had an owner that's with me today that's disagreed with that. But you don't want to get rid of a good paying tenant. So it's really got to be something on the other side of why you're doing this.
Where do you find your tenants? Do you place it on the MLS? Or are you putting that on Zillow? What's your method?
You can use Zillow and then it goes to Trujillo and another one, probably mispronounced that. Trujillo. So I know the websites not to go to, so you eliminate those because they only provide, you know, possibly bad applicants. You have to acknowledge the laws that are in force with government housing. And so you have to be very careful and knowledgeable about fair housing laws. And then you advertise and we get the response back. And then we require everybody to bring an application or send it to our office. And usually that means they come into our office and we get to meet them for a little while. And that helps provide a little continuity to them. And then you go through the background and add the application and everything. And then you do use realtor on the big expensive on houses about $3,000 to $4,000. You want to use realtor. You can get 10 to 15% more money than I can. So again, a realtor can get 10 to 15% more rent than I can. My marketplace without a realtor is down below. And I tell my owners, use a realtor. Yes.
Can you find the tenants mostly?
How can you find tenants?
How soon you can?
How
find
soon?
tenants mostly?
Okay. It's like selling a house. If a house is in really good shape and the market price is where it should be for that property, then you'll rent out in 3 weeks presently. If one of those market condition is off, price is off, it can sit there. Yes.
Okay, so from your experience, after the eviction, is the case is that so mostly the unpaid rental can be paid and be collected or just give up? The unpaid rent
The unpaid rent,
can be collected after eviction successfully?
a whole lot of work. I had one owner put in over a year to go back and get back rent collected, had to work with a collection attorney, had to get a money judgment, which is separate from an eviction judgment. So when you get eviction judgment, it doesn't include a money judgment. So all that back rent is separate. So you have to pay attorney to go in to get the money judgment, to go try and have opportunity to turn to collection attorney to do their work.
A lot.
So in our experience, it took after eviction over a year for the owner to go get their money. And then they put a garnishment, so it wasn't all at one time.
Is there 5 or 6% paid when there's unpaid rent?
No, it's only on collective rent.
Only on collected rent?
Yeah. Yes.
What for the advertising, like zero, that's your
Do I have a fixed charge for advertising? No, I don't charge for advertising.
In everything, just the 5 to 6%.
Pretty well.
So if the owner wants to rent through a realtor, but have you manage the property, are you okay with that?
Perfect.
You like it?
Yes.
I don't want to do the rental, but I know some people do, you know.
If people want to do the rental of the lease, then they have to work with Regal Property Management. And then we work together to put in a tenant and then we go through that.
So if we're doing the leasing, we're gonna use our car form.
I can work with the car form.
Now, it's great, it has all the basic, I heard you say one piece of advice, which was 10 months, basically keep it under 1 year. So that way you have the ability to take action and don't give them what's called full 1 year tenant rights. What other suggestions on our car form would you say for landlord protection?
That's a good idea.
I have 6 pages of supplemental documentation that Regal Property Management would supply. Because we found your car form in some areas is lacking. So, but we supply those supplements and then that pretty well covers everything. Yes.
So if you get a vacant property, you have, and you lease it, is that just zero charge or is it 5% after collect? Or are you charging to use the
So if an owner has a $5,000 house they want to rent, And we use a realtor. The owner, I'm gonna talk the owner into the simple thing. Use a realtor. If you pay 5 or 6% commission, you get 10 or 15% more a year. You're making 9%. Go with a realtor. Okay, the owner is also going to pay Regal Property Management for our time and effort, 25% of the first month's rent. So they're going to get double hit. But that gives them incentive to keep us find a good tenant, keep them in there for 5 or 6 years, not have turnover costs, and keep things going.
So you still charge the 25%.
Yes.
Whether the
Even
rental
with
comes
the
from you or from the
five
realtor.
tenants?
Yes, I still charge. Because,
That's
pardon?
that is for what kind of ice?
There's a lot of work on our side that we do.
Oh, it's set up.
So
If you find a home that has safe, habitable, yet old, then you make the recommendation to, hey, we should remodel it and get better rents.
yes,
Do you make those, did you perform that more of an extensive remodel, like a bathroom, kitchen remodel, or do you not? Just keep it as is?
okay, so for the question is, we have a vacant unit. How's Regal Property Management approach that? So we think you owned a house, you would want to know 3 things, 3 options. 1, if you just leave it as is and paint it, do some floor, clean the carpet, what would you get? That's one price. If you have an old kitchen and we put in new countertops, but we can use the cabinets, and so that's more expensive. So then what price do you get? Higher price. And then owner, if you really wanted to make it nice, redo the kitchen, redo the bathroom, put in laminate floors, paint it, you would get top of the market price. So if you give the option to the owner, those 3 ways to go about it, sort of like you do with houses. Houses, if you want to sell owner just as is, you get this price. If you want to put money into it.
Do you act as
It
a
goes
general
up.
contractor? Do you act as the general in that?
No. I have all vendors who do all the work.
But you hire them.
They are hired based upon what the owner wants. Does the owner want the high rate, middle rate, or just basic things? Yes.
This is for the rent. You charge first month 25% only one year or every year you charge 1 time?
No, just one time. First month. Yes.
What kind of risk, occurs when the agents does property management?
What kind of risk? Well, do you have, if you're hiring vendors, do you have their business card, liability insurance, workman's compensation insurance, contractor's license, and a signed W-9 by them? 5 pieces of paper you'd better have in your file. If not, you're subject to an audit, and that audit will cost you money by workman's compensation, come in, insurance, and if you don't have it, it's lots of money. So you want to have all the documentation on vendors. You want to have, if they're an in-house, if you have a W-9, you need W-9 signed by the owner, so you can give money because you're paying them over $600 a month. So you have that owner sign that piece of paper. Otherwise, you're subject to the laws. I've gotten audited by the real estate license board about every 5 years. So they will ask for entire record. They can ask for entire records. They usually take samples, probably like your broker has to go through samples. If the file's clean, great. If not, they go further and further. Further they go, the more money it costs you, or time and effort. So
The other risk is if they sue, they're gonna sue you.
yes, so if there's a slip and fall,
Okay, our company, with property management.
yes,
We do not have insurance for property management, and we do not allow agents to do property management. If they do it, it's
on their own.
On their own.
I don't think there's any such thing as that on your own.
Well, we do have the people that do property management, they have to sign an agreement with the office that we are not responsible.
That's up to you in your office.
I don't think that's enforceable.
It's not enforceable. We don't know about it.
Very risky.
It's risky.
There is a risk on guys, and I just, and you guys read my email I sent about a month ago regarding the risk of property management. And so there is a piece of question I'm gonna ask you. But yes, if you're associated, you're communicating on behalf of the landlord, you're setting up, meetings, you're automatically perceived to be the manager of this property because they never meet the owner. So my question for you, if an agent is doing this for compensation for a client, okay, without the authority or approval of a company, broker, they are technically putting the risk of their license because they're receiving compensation directly from
Without going through a
client,
broker.
not being paid by the broker. So is that true or not true?
There's a liability right there because you're
Okay.
getting direct and you're working under a broker if you're not working on a separate license.
Direct compensation is one risk. And let's just say, oh, I'm not even receiving any compensation. They're not paying me anything. I'm just looking and helping them with communications only. There's still that risk of what they're perceivable. Secondly, there is also, let's say, oh, I'm doing it for my relative now. Okay, my in-laws. Okay. And I'm not doing it for any compensation. It's a favor for my in-laws. Because this is not your own property, there still is a duty from the Department of Real Estate to have reconciliation of trust fund handling, reconciliation of accounts. And you've added that responsibility to yourself, managing that property for no fee. And you don't have a chart of accounts or reconciliation. Is that true or not? If it's for a relative?
Yeah, because you essentially are taking on the role of management, whether you're getting a fee or not. It's going to be less material.
But when you're doing your own self-managed property that I do own, I don't need to have any trust fund rules. Yes or no?
I think you can do it by yourself.
If you own it, you don't have that duty, but for a relative,
If you're doing it on behalf of somebody else.
see, and so a relative won't even play that card because you still have to have a trust fund for a relative or a past client. And I don't know how many of you guys have set up your trust funds, but you have a broker license to do so.
You gotta have a broker's license, don't you?
Okay.
Yeah.
So therefore, that's why there's a lot of risk and perils of management. Which, I'm not here to tell you, don't make any income or don't build your relations. I think they're just, you gotta weigh the pros and cons of doing favors for the hope of getting a listing later on. Okay. A well-managed property that you're supposed to be doing, they're not gonna sell it. Okay, it's performing, it's an asset. It's not likely they're gonna want to sell it unless something tragic happens. So even if you do a great job managing it for them, they're not gonna want to sell it.
It goes all the way to the fact that, and this is a call you get all the time. Can you give me the forms? Yes, I can give you the forms, but if you do give them the forms, go to the bottom where it says Coldwell Banker Dynasty and Jerry Baker on the bottom of those forms and mark that out. Because otherwise, they can be said that they're all your forms.
Mhm.
You help them with the lease, you're responsible.
It's true. We had a case like
You
that.
typed it out too.
Yeah.
And if you typed out the
And every
price.
time you give them a form, if you don't look at that, it says right at the bottom, your name. And you're the one who gave it to them.
We had a case where the agent helped the developer to fill out the form. Okay, so because the handwriting, it proved that even they didn't get the, even if they're not on the contract, but then you help them, so you're liable.
Yeah.
You fill
Well, I
out
help
the
them
form.
fill them out, but I don't, I
think
take
you
that
do too.
risk, but
You explain what it
Yeah.
means, having them fill it out.
you're supposed to.
Yes.
So we know what your startup cost or what the price is for putting someone inside there. Is there, like, say you get started with someone and it doesn't work out. You end up, they're not happy with you, you're not happy with the way that they are operate as an owner. Is there some kind of like a minimum time frame? Is there an early termination?
My contract's usually 6 or 9 months, so we usually make it there. If we have to part ways before, I'm open to things. I'm not here to force anything. I wouldn't charge a penalty. I'm gonna try and leave on a good bridge, not burn any bridges. And if it works out, okay. If it doesn't work out, let's go on.
For those of us, and this is for our business now. We have our contracts 24-month notice, 24-hour notice for showings and inspections. And so we as realtors try to use that term and clause so that we can do either a showing to a tenant occupied home. Or an open house date and with no proper notice. So we get some resistance from the tenants. Is there any advice for us as realtors when we're listing and selling a property? How to get that clause, I guess, to it?
So if I have an owner who's gonna sell a property, I am going to tell my owner I'm talking to the tenant. I tell the tenant first. And I said, owner, let's be smart about this. Let's go ahead and offer them a discounted rate. They're right in house. How, they probably aren't gonna have all these inspections and everything else. So what rate, owner, would you be willing to give off? Have the tenant have cooperating? And you could get two sides of it. Wow, okay, if you want it. So I start at the beginning with the owner. I talk to the tenant. If the tenant knows their house is gonna sell, they come to the realization, I gotta move. Well, sometime you gotta move. You can go through the showings and tell the tenant, you're gonna have showings. We're gonna have to put this on here. You're gonna get interrupted. We will try and have some days, but we're gonna say, okay, it can be shown Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday, and Sunday from 1 to 5 or whatever. You set that up in advance and you say, you get as much cooperation as you can. So if I set it up well, they know it's coming. They usually say, well, or I say, if you want to move out, do you want to move out and get all your money back? Would you be out in 30, 45 days? So you try and pre-negotiate it, get them out in 45, 60 days. Then you have the showings easy, vacant place. If not, then you have the tenant say, these are the hours, and you just try and keep to it. I always call the tenant and say, hey, I got somebody coming at this time. I have somebody coming at this time. You try and make it appointments, get cooperation. If you have an uncooperative tenant, then you just got to deal with that situation. You're not going to get cooperation. So you will do what you have to do. They won't be happy. Those are the way of the past. It has to go. You can't force it. Eventually, that tenant will make usually the right move and move out. Say, did you have a question?
Mention about the tax deposit. Can we add tax deposit on top of 1 month?
Yes. Well, right now you can. I don't know with this new law. I have not had an attorney rule on that.
We'll know more by July 1st, 2024. But right now, if we can.
Yeah, you can charge extra pet deposit above secure deposit.
Deposit?
Yeah.
I would not do a key. I would not do, well, if you want to do a key deposit,
So there's no such thing as no pets?
from the tenant's point of view, they're all pretty, 99% are emotional support animals.
But there's no pets, and then they come in and then.
What kind of document we can ask for, certificate or?
No,
So there's emotional support animal form. I think I got it from Apartment Owner Association. So it's a 1-page form and you can fill it out. You put the name of the dog, the size of the dog, what type of dog. You have to clean up any litter it does, anything. You have to keep it on a leash when it's outside. And those are the rules.
That was a wealth of information. Anyone have any questions?
Good job. Thank
Oh,
you.
thank you.
You know your trade. You know your industry very well. We can tell. So anyway, do you have any property management referrals with clients? like we always do, we send 2 or 3 referrals, let the client interview and pick whomever they like, the vendors that they have the relationship with.
I will.
Thank you so much, Richard.
Thank you, Kelvin.
For
Appreciate it.
sharing us some of the experiences you've had.
They've got a few that listen to it, you know,
Thank you.
And
Thank you so much.